Hey everybody, it's Thursday. It's time for another episode of LonsTV. My name is Lon Harris. I will be your host. So I'm realizing that sites, opinion-based sites that crowdsource opinion, so like Yelp or TripAdvisor, I need to calibrate these sites. I need a way to know if the people whose reviews I'm reading share a worldview and tastes to me, or these sites are sort of useless. Let me backtrack for a second. I just booked my reservations and my tickets and all that for the launch conference, the last week in February, Jason Calacanis' new conference. It's sort of loosely modeled on what they were doing for the TechCrunch 50, so a bunch of companies are going to launch at the event, and then there's going to be judges, and they'll vote on sort of which the best company. And then, they get a prize. So I want to go. I'm going up to the conference. Jason was nice enough to get me a ticket. And I booked a reservation at this hotel in San Francisco. And then the only thing, I was looking at two things for the hotel. Is it relatively close to the venue such that I can walk, or it's a cheap cab ride, or I can hop on a tram or whatever? And two, is it not very expensive, because I didn't want to have to spend an arm and a leg to go. I mean, I want to go, but money's not... I need to be able to save a little money. So I looked at those two things. I ended up reserving this place called the Hotel Whitcomb that's right up the street from the venue. And then I was looking at TripAdvisor just to see what other people were saying about it, what the reviews were like. And basically reviews fell into two categories. This hotel is lovely and clean and great sheets and free Wi-Fi, and it's close to everything. And I was like, oh, sweet, this is sounding good. And then the other reviews are like, all those things are true, but don't go anywhere near this hotel or someone will stab you repeatedly in the face. So at first I was like, oh, wait, maybe I screwed up. And then I remembered, no, it's San Francisco. I mean, when I went up there for the TechCrunch 50, I stayed at the Hotel Metropolis, which was actually in the Tenderloin. This new hotel is in Soma, south of Market Street. The old hotel was in the Tenderloin, and it was pretty sketchy, but not so much that I minded being there. It was bad. The only thing about the Hotel Metropolis from when I stayed in San Francisco that bugged me had nothing to do with the neighborhood it was in. It was that they wouldn't call me a cab when I was ready to leave. I wanted to go to the airport, and we went to the lobby, and we're like, hey, can you get us a cab so we can get to the airport? And the guy was like, I don't know if they're going to come. Swear to God. He said, I don't know if they're going to come. And then there was this long conversation about it where we were like, really? But maybe call one and we'll just, if they don't show up, okay, but we gave it a try, And then it was sort of almost like he was shaking us down, like he wanted $20 to call us a cab. And it's like, if you're a hotel, beds and then the ability for me to get taxis, those are the two things that define being a hotel. So that was weird. But the neighborhood itself really didn't bother me. I mean, it's a little gross. It's downtown San Francisco, but it's downtown San Francisco. I know what to expect. So I was reading these reviews, and then I was thinking oh, this is not calibrated for me correctly, because I sort of knew I was going to stay in downtown San Francisco, and it was going to be a little downtown San Francisco. But this was written like somebody who'd never been to San Francisco before, and then they go in oh my goodness! Because one thing about San Francisco that stands out, even among other cities that have a lot of homeless and sort of mentally ill people on the streets. And those are two groups, homeless people and mentally ill people. Not always the same. But anyway, I have a lot of those kinds of people on the streets. Those guys, a lot of homeless people and a lot of mentally ill people and a lot of drug addicted people and a lot of other kind of unsavory or generally types that are associated with bad neighborhoods on the streets. But San Francisco, the homeless people tend to be very aggressive and in your face, I found. Unlike other cities, like LA has a lot of homeless people, especially if you're downtown, a few blocks away from the Staples Center. But they're laid back. They're not really aggressive about you. If you want to give them money, they would really appreciate it. But in San Francisco, it's you're going to give me your money. I'm not going to mug you, but I'm going to imply that if you don't give me your money, I'm going to get upset with you, and that's usually going to be enough to get people to give me their money. I realized I don't mind being in this kind of neighborhood, especially when I'm staying in a city, because it's there's always cool stuff. If you're in downtown LA, yeah, there's lots of bums, but hey, $7,000. And the one other funny thing I noticed about the TripAdvisor reviews is there are a lot of drug deals going around as their metric for how bad a neighborhood is. The number of drug deals or the visibility of drug deals, the worse the neighborhood gets, which I guess is a fair evaluation. I just didn't know we'd established that as the metric. The other thing is, having lived in a pretty seedy area of Hollywood not long ago, I feel like when there's a functioning drug economy, I'm really not that worried. It means the drug addicts are getting their drugs. The drug dealers know whose turf is whose and aren't really fighting. They're just in it for the money. So it's you've got sort of peace and stability when there's a prospering, functioning drug community. It's really when things go haywire, like there's disagreement about whose turf it is, or everybody suddenly doesn't have any money to get their drugs. That's when things get a little like on edge. But I would say, like, actually, if there's a lot of drug deals going on, it's like, hey, everybody's just gonna go home and do their drugs, man. You're cool. So anyway, the main thing I wanted to review today on the show, nothing to do with doing lots of drugs, I swear, is the film Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I've gotten so many requests, probably the most requested thing for me to review since I started doing LonsTV. So I did talk about it on This Week in Movies during my 2010 wrap-up. It was my number 10 favorite film of the year 2010. So I'll put the link below. I did talk about it on that episode, but hey, not on LonsTV, so we'll talk about it here. I will also say I'm not trying for like a lot of awesome geek cred here. I had not read the graphic novel series until I heard about the movie and I knew the movie was coming out, and then I read it to like catch up, so I didn't seem totally out of it. But I was not like a long-time fan of this material who was really like invested in seeing it done well. I was more just curious about the movie because I like Edgar Wright, and it seemed up my alley, and it was. I really enjoyed the movie, and I liked it because when I first heard about it and sort of the original concept, it seemed like it was going to be a lot of references, like, oh, this is the movie that makes all the references to the 8-bit games, and it's like, are you nerdy and cool enough to know like all those old school games that it's referencing? And it's really not about that at all. It's really about internalizing the logic of a video game world into the real world. And there have been a lot of movies about combining like computer and computing technology and the internet with humanity, like, you know, Tron and Virtuosity and Lawnmower Man and all that stuff. But there's never been a movie about what if the real world just had rules that reflected video games. Like, and for those of us who came of age growing up with video games, it's a surprisingly natural fit. Like, we internalize those rules and we understand the mechanics of games, and we can watch a movie that operates just on those rules instead of the rules of real life. So if you were making like a comedy, a romantic comedy set in a world that was run like video games, you know, all the things that people do in those movies would be like leveling up, you know, like getting a girlfriend and practicing and making your band a lot better, and like finding out who you are. Like, that's really the main metaphor of the film, less so than like, remember old school games, aren't they great? But it's just like, you know, coming of age and learning about yourself in the real world presented as if you were a character leveling up or advancing in a video game. And honestly, like, that's pretty insightful. Like, that's pretty clever. I think that's probably more clever than the movie gets credit for. Two more things I will shout out about the movie that I really enjoy. I mean, obviously, I haven't talked about the style of it, and Edgar Wright is a great stylist and really funny, and all of his movies have this like propulsive energy, and Scott Pilgrim has it too, where you're just kind of pulled in all the way through. So that's great, and the effects are great, and the look and feel is all really well done. But the two things I wanted to call out, one is Beck's amazing soundtrack. It's like this lo-fi 90s nostalgia rock that I really love, and it was sort of the music when I was discovering music and coming of age that was really popular. And you know, Beck wrote a lot of the songs for Sex Bob-omb, the band in the movie, and there's just a lot of other great bands on there too. There's you know, Metric and Blood Red Shoes and a few others. T-Rex has a song on there. So it was one of the albums, the soundtrack was just one of the CDs I probably played the most last year, and it's great to hear all that stuff in the movie. And then finally, Kieran Culkin, who really did not get enough credit. I think one of the year's funniest, if not the year's funniest comic performance. It's really hard to pull off like deadpan through an entire film. Like, he was never once tempted to like break the deadpan and make this character like more likable and more human and really like give him like a closure and a happy ending. Like, he just keeps it. He totally commits to the deadpan the entire film, and it's really hilarious, and it's just a bold choice, and there was the risk of him being like really unlikable, and instead he's one of the most memorable characters in the film. So Scott Pilgrim versus the World, if you're one of the few people who at all likes video games or that kind of style of film and you haven't already seen it, definitely check it out. That is today's LonsTV. Thanks everybody who has subscribed. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so, and I will see all of you back here tomorrow.